Oceans are a vital source of life. They produce over half the world's oxygen, regulate our climate, provide food and jobs, and absorb heat and carbon dioxide, keeping it out of our atmosphere. In fact, oceans absorb over 90% of the excess heat generated by human activity and about 25% of carbon emissions. But today, the rate of CO2 emissions is the highest in recorded history. As a result, oceans are absorbing more CO2 than ever before, changing their chemistry faster than we can imagine. If current trends continue, ocean acidity is projected to increase by 150% by the end of the century. Ecological restoration of the oceans is vital if we want to protect marine life and our future. When we burn fossil fuels, we release CO2 into the atmosphere. Roughly a third of this carbon dioxide dissolves into the ocean, where it reacts with seawater to form carbonic acid. This process lowers the ocean's pH, a shift from about 8.2 in 1960 to 8.05 today. This change may sound minor, but it is a 40% increase in acidity, a major shift in ocean chemistry that disrupts marine ecosystems. This acidification threatens many forms of marine life, especially organisms that rely on calcium carbonate to build shells and skeletons, like coral, shellfish, and plankton. Coral reef dissolution is especially devastating, as coral reefs support 25% of all marine species, serving as nurseries, feeding grounds, and protective habitats. And when reefs degrade, biodiversity collapses. Higher-level trophic organisms die out, and with fewer fish, wild fisheries shrink and the job market becomes more competitive. There are higher prices in seafood markets and restaurants, and regional economic downturns in coastal communities. Also, many developing countries struggle as there is greater global food insecurity, meaning a higher demand for imported food. This leads to economic instability and political tensions that can affect trade and aid. There could be also possible increases in international migration, affecting global labor markets. A recent National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration report warns that if new legislation is not passed, there could be billions of dollars in damage to the U.S. economy. The U.S. Virgin Islands are already feeling this, as reef-based tourism contributes an estimated $492 million annually. As reefs decline, so does tourism, harming local businesses and national economies that depend on it. The main federal legislation in place in the United States is the 2009 Federal Ocean Acidification Research and Monitoring Act, which created the National Program on Ocean Acidification to maintain active research to understand the potential impacts of decreased ocean pH. However, the act falls short on implementation and funding. Stronger legislation is needed with clearer defined goals, actionable strategies, and international cooperation. Encouragingly, the U.S. Virgin Islands have drafted a promising restoration program for their coral reefs, with the overall goal to identify areas where efforts will be most successful considering a multitude of factors. The U.S. Virgin Islands plan to do this by tracking coral restoration projects at specific sites to understand which tactics are working. They'll be facilitating sexual and asexual propagation both in water and on land to boost genetic diversity, which increases ecological resistance to threats like ocean acidification. But how does this affect you? You may pay more for seafood vacations and imported goods. Your taxes may help fund disaster relief aid or job programs in affected regions. You may face job market shifts if you work in related industries, such as tourism, shipping, or agriculture. But there are ways that you can help. By switching to more energy-efficient appliances, consuming less, choosing sustainable products, using more public transportation to limit CO2 emissions, and, most importantly, by urging policymakers to support immediate science-based solutions like the U.S. Virgin Island Coral Restoration Program. The future of our oceans and our economies depends on it.